Good evening, one and all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our GRE free trial Thursday edition. My name is David, and I am going to be your host for tonight's session. And I'm joined by a gaggle of Kaplan experts who are here to help you through the study on advanced statistics and also answer your questions about Kaplan and about the GRE and just basically help us all to have a wonderful night. We have Chauncey and Anne and Benji and Hank and Jessica and Kat. We've got all kinds of people here that are going to be helping you out. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. Feel free to participate as much as possible. Grab a pen or a pencil and some paper so you can take some wonderful notes as we go through the lesson tonight. Basically, we're here at your disposal. So hopefully you're going to walk out of here tonight with a whole lot more knowledge about the GRE, about Kaplan, about advanced statistics. Hopefully it's going to be a great night for you. I'm sure it will be. Let me know, how many of you are some of our frequent flyers who have been here for other nights? Let us know in the chat. Tell us, how many of you have been here, have already seen some of the great sessions, and you just can't wait to get rolling on a new one. Hopefully we got a bunch of frequent flyers. Hopefully you've been taking advantage of it. Please, anytime we've got something running, you definitely want to show up because we want you to benefit as much as possible. Let me roll through real quickly, and we're going to talk about some opening information. And for those of you who've been here other nights, you probably have heard some of this, so I don't want to waste too much of your time. But for other people, this may be your first night. You may not be too familiar with the GRE itself, so I want to make sure we do that. And then we're going to launch our actual lesson with Chauncey Bellamy. He is one of our very best teachers, and he's going to be popping on in a few minutes here to walk us through the advanced statistics. And at the end, I'm going to come back on and talk to you about some other ways that you can improve your score, other ways that you can get more tests ready for GRE day. All right, so the GRE itself, let's take a quick look at what exactly it looks like. If you have not seen it before, it is a different animal than something that you would have seen in high school. If you took the ACT or the SAT, the GRE is different. It has some very unique question types that only the GRE offers. And so you might find yourself a bit taken aback if you haven't experienced it before. It starts off right off the bat, pops you right in the mouth with a couple of essays. People ask why they do the essay first. I kind of feel that it's just to tire everybody out, so that they all start from an equal level. They all are tired. Their brains are all hurting. They're 30 minutes each. You have to analyze an issue. You have to analyze an argument. The argument, they don't want your opinion. So it's like right there, that's already a different type of essay than you probably have had to write before. And some of you are probably right now saying, wait. Essays, those don't count, right? They don't count into your verbal and math scores, into your quantitative score and your verbal score. No, they don't. But you still have to take them. Some colleges want it. Some programs within colleges want it. We harp on this. We say it so much that you need to talk to your school that you're looking at. You need to ask them what they want, so that you are fully prepared and you're not caught off guard by anything, to know whether or not they do want the essays. Some programs that you would think never in a million years would care, want them. Some ones that you're sitting there going, well, it's humanities, essays probably make sense. They may not need them. And so definitely talk to your schools and find out. Then you have a quantitative section and a verbal section, and then you're going to have a break. Now, at that break, something magical happens on your test, and you actually are then going to, on your second half, after the break, your quantitative section, verbal section will be dependent on how you performed earlier in the test. So if you didn't do as well in quantitative, you will be on an easier track on the second half. Now, that may sound great, but it also limits your scoring potential. So there's an easy, a medium, and a hard. They are scored differently. You cannot get a maximum score out of the easy section on the second one. And they kind of layer over each other like Spanish tiles. So that's basically how they operate. There also is an experimental section that kind of floats in and ruins the party. It doesn't like advertise itself as like experimental. You don't know which one it is. And so you just need to take all of the sections and completely do your best on all of them. Because you would really hate to think, oh, this is experimental. Look at all these weird questions in here. And then find out that was scored. That would be like tragic. And so don't do that. As far as the break goes, you definitely want to take your break. Do not say, I'm tough, I can go through it. That's just not smart. Get up, walk around, do some lunges or deep knee bends, something to get your blood flowing again, eat a little protein bar, drink some water, try to talk trash to some of the other students to get in their head and lower their score, whatever it's going to take for you to do well. But definitely use that break. The test overall takes about 4 hours. Now you'll get your scores for quantitative and verbal immediately. Your scores will not be official for a couple of weeks though, and that's not until you get your essay grades back. But that quantitative and verbal, that's going to be your score. And so you can know what you got immediately then, send scores to 4 schools at that point, and then you leave and skip back home. The scoring itself on the GRE is scored on a bell curve from 130 to 170. As you can see in the middle right there, that's going to be the median. You're going to have 151 for verbal, 153 for quant. You can also see that the numbers of students pile up there in the middle, and so you kind of like go down like a ski hill down towards the higher scores. You can race down very quickly. And the one other thing to notice is that just a couple of points difference can race you past thousands and thousands of students. I mean, look at the jump over here on the right between the 90th and the 80th percentile. That just 3 points different in verbal, which may only be like 4 questions different, can put you ahead of 10% of the people taking the test. And so even little tiny improvements, little tiny things, like even what you're learning tonight, could be enough to generate a couple of points extra for you. And so if you're frustrated because you're not reaching your dream school score, don't get frustrated, do something about it and try to get yourself that extra little boost that you need. Now, today, what you're going to be learning about, you're going to learn some score raising strategies. One of the things about Kaplan is we've been doing this for a long time. We're the industry leader. We've been around the longest. We don't mess around. We constantly are improving, constantly working hard to make sure that we are current, using the best new technologies, using the best learning sciences. And so the strategies, the methods that we offer, those are things that are going to help you on test day. So pay attention, take good notes as Chauncey is talking to make sure that you're getting all of the juicy goodness from today's lesson. We're also going to teach you how to tackle some questions quickly and accurately. We are going to talk about time management, how to pace yourself, do better in each of the different sections that you're going to cover. And then also we're going to have some questions for you to actually work on, some actual test day questions, just like you'll see on test day. And we'll walk through those together with you and show you how you could do better on those, get them right more often, be more efficient, okay? So I'm excited about today. I'm excited about tonight's lesson. In just a minute here, Chauncey's going to hop on screen. Now, Chauncey's one of our very, very best GRE teachers. He's a part of the GRE channel, which is a new feature that's part of our GRE program. We like to call it the Netflix of test prep, where you can basically come on any time of day and you can see pre-recorded sessions. At night, you can watch free live sessions. It's all part of your Kaplan class if you're a Kaplan student. And Chauncey's one of those teachers. He's fantastic. You're going to learn a lot from him. And I want to make sure that he has every minute that he can to spend time with you. So I'm going to tell him to come on camera and we're going to have a great time. I'll be back at the end to help answer some more questions and talk about some other stuff. Enjoy your time. And here's Chauncey.
All right. Oh, my goodness. Thanks so much, David, for that wonderful introduction. Hey, everybody. Are you ready for some advanced statistics? Can you believe they're giving this away for free? What is going on? So here's the thing. As David was saying, this is one of our channel sessions. There are also what we call core sessions. So it's a lot of stuff going on. You have a lot of opportunities to master what you need to nail things down on test day for the GRE. So what we're going to do is take a look at the upper level topics that we're going to get to tonight together. Okay, buckle in, everybody. Here we go. So here are the learning objectives for this session. We're going to, wait a minute, standard deviation, who put that in there? So we're going to deal with standard deviation, definitely. Now note it says calculate it. We will talk about that. But we're also going to deal with the properties of it. Some questions at the advanced level require that we know the formula, but don't be afraid, we'll show that to you. Some, though, will require us just to understand what that means. Okay. We're also going to deal with what's called, and this is just a tongue twister, continuous frequency distributions. So we'll see what that is when we get to that. Now, the main thing about those is that there is this normal distribution. It's a particular kind of continuous frequency distribution. And this one is likely to show up on test day in some way. So these topics that we're going to see in this session, they're not going to be on a lot of GRE quant questions, but they will be there. And if you see them, especially at the advanced level, you want to nail them down. Now, you can see at the bottom, this talks about best viewed after you've covered statistics and core and channel. So that's what I was talking about, those two different kinds of sessions that we offer our students. So they would work their way up to this. That's what we're talking about. So there are 4 core sessions for quant. In the third one, you get some statistics information. And then you get just basic GRE statistics in the channel. So we don't just throw everybody into the deep end. We get them ready for these higher level topics. Okay. So now that we've seen what we're going to accomplish tonight, here we go. Let's start with standard deviation. So here's our introduction. Before we get to standard deviation, measures of central tendency. So let us know in the chat, everybody. Let the experts there chiming in know, let me know. What do you think we're talking about when we say central tendency, if we're measuring it? What kind of statistic terms do you think apply to that? You could even think of something like if you're driving down a road and there's something in the middle of it, what do we call that thing? You don't drive on it, hopefully. So here, if you're thinking, wait a minute, I know what that is. Mean, so that's the average, sum of the terms over number of terms, and the median. That's in the middle of the road, or some of the roads, right? So in this session, we're going to focus on these two in conjunction with the advanced statistics topics. Yeah, and I see, yes, Susan and some others talking about the mode. That's a part of it as well. The mode isn't quite as common for these topics, but maybe we'll see it. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out. So beautiful job in the chat with that, everybody. So now, we're going to combine these with the advanced statistics topics, because mean and median is going to be at all kinds of levels. Again, for the mode that Susan brought up, very good, that would be in the GRE statistics channel session. Okay, so now in contrast to these central tendency measurements, we do get what's called the dispersion of, or how spread out the data set is. And that's called the what? Well, we can see that at the top of this slide, standard deviation. So this is the main thing to keep in mind. Again, it's a measure of how spread out the items are in the list. Sometimes that's enough to answer questions. Just that. However, again, at this advanced level, sometimes you're going to need the 5-step approach to calculating standard deviation. So here it is. Let's go through one by one these steps. Then we're going to apply it to a question. We're going to see how this works out. So for the first step to calculate standard deviation, get the mean. Now remember, that's going to be the average of the terms, or sorry, not average, the sum of the terms. This is the average. The sum of the terms over the number. So anytime you see arithmetic mean on the GRE, that's what they're talking about. Because average could also be the median or the mode, technically. So that's why they define that as the mean. Now, the second step, here we are. Whoa, let's move the notes, is use the differences from the mean in each value. So what you're going to do is, for each term, you're going to find its difference from the average that you've just found. And again, we're going to try this out step by step in a moment. After you've done that, found a difference for each term, you then square those differences. And it's important to remember that, because then you find the average again. So you start with that average, the mean, you find the difference between each term in the mean, you square those differences, then you find the average of the squares. And that's not it. The fifth and final step is to find that positive square root of the average. Now, on the GRE, the square root is always going to lend itself to positivity. We're always going to be positive and in sunshine on this test. So just keep that in mind. They only deal with real numbers here. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty straightforward what to do. You just have to remember those steps. And remember, this is going to pay off at that advanced level. That's when you might have to use this instead of, again, saying, wait a minute. Then you just say it's all about how spread out the list is. So keep both of these in mind. All right, so now let's apply this to a numeric entry question. Let's see what happens. So taking a look here, everybody, just do a quick glance at this question. We can see that. Now we've got to come up with the answer on our own. Whenever you have numeric entry, so we can see this little box there, we've got to input the answer. So you want to be very careful that you answer the right question and input it properly, right? Okay. So note we're dealing with the standard deviation of these 5 numbers. Now, in this case, well, we don't have answer choices, so we can't deal with, okay, how spread out is the list. We've got to go through those 5 steps. So what's that first step again to get the standard deviation? You remember that? Let us know. Let the experts know in the chat. So remember, we do something twice. First step and fourth step. And that is, if you're going, wait a minute, I remember that. We were talking about the average, that mean. Sum over the number. Oh, boy. So we have the addition, all those 5 terms, over that number. So if you were to calculate the mean for this set, what would you come up with? And this kind of thing, you don't want to do all the math in your head. You want to make sure that you use your notes strategically. Because if you do everything in your head, it's going to fatigue you. And this is how you go, well, how did I come up with that number? What was I thinking about when you review your notes in practice? So, yeah, I've seen the means come in and the mean that we have to deal with, or the average. And now, let's see what you had. So if we add up the terms over the number, we would get 25 over 5. So, yes, the first step is done. We know that the average, or the mean, of these 5 numbers is 5. Now, remember, once you have that, you want to deal with each term and the average. You essentially want to find the term's distance away from the average. That's going to be that difference. So each of those 5, how they relate to the average. So you just want to make sure that you're clear about what that average is. So what we can do, anytime you have information to organize, you can use a table or chart. And this is how it could look. So we have this, the value, the difference from the mean, that's where we are next. Then we have to square those differences. So if you start with 4, let's start there. 4, you would go, well, wait, is that above or below the average of 5? And then by how much? So that's how you would get that difference. So we have the value of 4, it's below, so this is how you get a -1. 1 below the average. But then remember to square the differences. And don't forget that when you square numbers, the outcome can never be negative. So the difference squared is 1. So you just want to make sure in your notes that it's clear what your steps are and what the outcomes are. Here we just have to be very methodical to get to the correct answer. And we would do this for each of the remaining terms. So 2 is 3 below. Square the -3, you get 9. 5 is Nothing. And if you square nothing, you get nothing. So we have that for 5. 5 is the average itself. And you do the same for 8 and 6. 8 is 3 above, square that, that's 9. So 8 is 3 above, 2 is 3 below. Note that the differences squared are the same. And then the last thing is the 6, and that's 1 above. Squaring 1 again gets us to 1. Now what do we do after this? So we've gotten the mean. We started there. That was step 1. We then found the difference between each term and the mean. That was step 2. Step 3, we square the differences. Then what's step 4? And when we're done with this question, everybody, we're going to see these 5 steps again on this slide. So if you missed some of it, you could jot it down. So again, we got the mean, we got the differences, we square the differences, then we do what? And here's where we have to repeat a step, but we have to do that carefully. So next we have to find the average of the squared differences. So if that's what you were thinking, that's right. So we can see that, well, wait, if we add up these differences, we get 20. Remember, it's going to be the sum over the number. So we're still using this formula here that I'm putting in the green rectangle. So then you would be careful to count up your terms. But note, it's going to be the same number of terms as the number of terms in the original list. Yeah. So now everybody's saying, let's get to this average. So if we divide by 5, then you get the average of 4. And after that, here's where you want to make sure that you don't forget the final step. Because whatever you put into that numeric entry box, whatever number you come up with, it will accept. So here we want to make sure that we confirm that we're answering the question, that we finished the 5 steps. So what's that going to be? What do we have to do in the final step to get to the average of 4? Or is it the average of 4? What do we do with that? Yes, what we're going to do is find the square root. And the positive square root of 4 is 2. And then once you do that, you go, wait, okay, did I complete all of these steps? Yes, 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 I did. Input this into the numeric entry box. That will be your answer, and it's correct. So just note that going through these 5 steps, everyone, we just do that methodically, carefully. If you spot that a question on the GRE requires that, you can go, oh, this is probably pretty tough. A lot of people probably don't know how to do this, but I do. And I could get the points from this question. Wow. Beautiful job with the chiming in, everybody, knowing which step is which. Again, you can snag these 5 steps now if you miss them. But now, let's stay with standard deviation. But what we're going to do, we're going to give you a chance to try a question on your own. Now, here's the thing to think about. Do you need this 5-step approach? Or do you need to just think about how spread out the list is? Or could you put both of those concepts together? So let's take you to question 2. All of the experts, we're going to give you some time to try this on your own. And below your chat, you'll probably see a poll there to vote for the correct answer. You can use that. And on the clock, we're going to give you a minute to try this question. Okay? So 1 minute's coming up, everybody. After that, we'll review together. Good luck. Okay, so let's see how you did with this. So we'll see what's going on in the poll, how you voted. But let's just start reviewing, shall we? So this is a quantitative comparison question. And the title of that is very important. So you always want to compare the two quantities back and forth. So now that we've seen that, I can see that the two popular answers are A or C. We'll find out. Okay, so is it this one? Is it that one? Most of us are voting that way. So, first thing, remember, they mentioned standard deviation in each of the quantities. So if we're comparing, we can see that. And then the lists are a little different. Not the same terms, but we do have X in each term. So we're just getting the lay of the land there. We're analyzing what's going on. So the question is, though, if it's standard deviation, how are the spreads of these two lists related? Are they spread out similarly, or are they spread out differently? That's going to be the question. So if you look at this and you go, wait a minute, it looks like the spread's almost the same because, for instance, if we pick the number for X, if we said that X was 1, then the A list would be, well, it would be 1 for X, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. And for quantity B, it would be, well, -1, then we'd have, 0, 1, 2, and then 3. So looking at how these lists are spread looks similar, just going up by 1 consecutively. So then you go, well, wait a minute. That would be C. They're going to have the same standard deviation. That would be C. So, well, let's double check because we have some votes for A, but is it C? Well, let's see what's going on. So if you were to start going through the 5 steps to calculate standard deviation, here we go for quantity A. The mean is X plus 2. Now note, everybody, that is the same as the median of the list. So in equally spaced lists, so if there's an equally spaced list of terms, the median is the same thing as the mean. Just keep that in mind. So that's a quick way to snag it. Equally spaced list, median equals mean. Whoa. Okay. Now, if we go to the next part, we want the difference between each term and the mean, and again, the mean is X plus 2, then we get this. X is 2 below, X plus 1 is 1 below, and so on. Now, at this point, we could go, well, wait a minute. If we shift over to quantity B, will those differences be the same from the mean? So I see that now some of us are going, oh, maybe it's C, maybe it's C. And this is what happens in practice. You start reviewing, you go through the steps again, you check an explanation, you go, oh, okay, I was okay here. Maybe I made a little mistake there. That's fine. Mistakes are how you learn. Embrace them in practice. And practice is when you build your scores. It's not on test day. It's in practice. Am I being a revolutionary? I don't know. Okay, so let's go to quantity B. Again, finding the average, same thing as the median, it's X. Difference between that and each term, it's the same. So yes, those of you who chose C, or if you started to see, well, wait a minute, I made a little mistake there. That's okay. I now know the answer choice is C for Chauncey. Oh my goodness, C for Chauncey. This one is correct. Beautiful. Now, let's continue with standard deviation. Let's take a look at another question. We're going to give you another chance at this, okay? And here we go. So question 3, another quant comp question. We're going to give you a minute again on the clock. Vote in the new poll. It should be below your chat there. And enjoy. All right, so you had some more time with this question. Hold on. So let's go through this very carefully. First things first, they talk about adding 8 to the list. So one more 8 is added to this list, and that's how we get S. So we're still dealing with standard deviation in the two quantities when we compare them. So this is still the comparison, but it's between the two lists. So be careful, make sure that you know A is about R, B is about S. You don't want to mix those up. So we're very clear now what we're doing. So here's the question. If you add an 8 to list R, what happens to the standard deviation? Does the list become more spread out or less spread out? So even if you list it, if we sandwich an 8 in here, right in there, what happens to the spreading out of the list? Does it get more compressed? That's a lower standard deviation. Or does it spread out a little more? If you understand that concept, you don't even need the 5 steps to figure this out. So that's the goal here. It's to know when to use the 5 steps and when to just think about how spread out the list is. Again, that's the dispersion. So if you wanted to compare more easily, you could just start with step 1 of those 5 steps, finding the mean. So if we do that, the mean here of list R, sum over the number again, find that sum, and you get 40 over 5. So we know this is about 8. Now at this point, we can see if you add another 8 to the list. Yeah, the average is going to stay the same, but when you find the average of the squared differences, that's again between each term and the average, there's one extra term in list S. So while that extra term in list S doesn't change the sum of the squared differences, because that would just be 0 added in, it increases the number. So what will happen in your denominator, if you were to go through all of those steps, is you'd have a larger denominator, and that's for list S, but the same numerator. And when we have positive fractions, the larger the denominator is with the same numerator, the smaller the number gets. So you could think of it that way, or just go, wait, I can tell that list R is more spread out. So it looks like, voting in the poll, A and C were close, B is fading away as a possible answer, but based on what we said, just based on the dispersion, A is going to be correct. Oh, and that's A for Allie. So here, everybody, we can see that yes, you can understand the 5 steps for standard deviation, or think about how spread out the list is. Adding the 8 makes it less spread out. That means A must be greater. Okay, so that takes care of everything for standard deviation. Whew. Now, the second learning objective, this is all about the continuous frequency distributions. Okay, let's see what they are dealing with. All right. So before we get to a continuous frequency distribution, this is a discrete one. So before we get into what is he talking about? Okay, so overall, just so you know, the GRE does not test continuous frequency distributions all that much. Actually, the one they tend to test, again, is the normal distribution, and we'll get to that in a moment. So right now, we're just going to cover the basic concepts that don't require calculations for continuous frequency distributions. And you might, or maybe you won't, have to deal with it on test day. Oh yeah, okay. So here's the point of a continuous frequency distribution. It gives us the frequency of data, so that's how often the data occur in the data set, but without giving the actual numbers. And the reason why it's continuous is because it's on a continuum. Now, before we see that kind of distribution, again, let's look at this discrete one that's on this slide. That's going to help us to understand what's going on in the continuous frequency distribution. So, in this discrete distribution, we have discrete values. We can see those values going along the x-axis. All right, so Here are those discrete values going along the x-axis. So we're going from 1 to 19. Now the y-axis, that's what gives us the frequency or the count. How many of each of those discrete values are in the set. So let's add that in. So frequency is the y-axis, or again, the count. Okay. So that's what's happening here. Y is giving us how many of each discrete value we get. And again, along the x-axis, we get to see how many discrete values are at play. Now, if we take a look at this distribution, we can see how often, again, the data are above or below certain values. So we can do some comparisons here. But here's a key question. Where is most of the data clustered? So let us know in the chat, where on this graph would we find the majority of data? And here we can think of the peak. So if we're thinking of the peak, which is here, is most of the data near that peak? Is it far away from the peak? That kind of translating is what you want to be able to do when you see a distribution with a curve on test day. So if you're looking at that peak, you go, well, wait a minute, I can see along the y-axis how many 2s, 3s, and 4s, and even 5s I have. And that looks like, that looks like a lot of the data, right? So based on this, we can tell that most of the data is at the peak. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You want to stick with that peak, and that's going to help you out. The majority of the data is there. And we also have a rough idea of how spread out this is. Yeah. So we can see that, yes, and a lot of you are going, it's 3, near the 3. So just keep in mind on test day, if you happen to see one of these, a continuous frequency distribution won't include these actual numbers and bars like we see here. Okay, they're going to take that away. But it's going to give us similar items to pull out. So instead of those actual numbers, here's how it would look. So we can see that continuum. We can still see, okay, here's the peak. Most of the data is there. And we can see how spread out the list is. Okay, so just keep that in mind. General information for continuous frequency distributions. Now let's see how this plays out in format. We're going to try a question together just to get our sea legs here. Okay, all right. So here's question 4. As you can see, we have the same continuous frequency distribution from the previous slide. Now bear in mind that this isn't the only way that this kind of distribution might appear on test day. There's a lot of ways, right? Now, we're again in quantitative comparisons, and take a look at what we're comparing here. The median and the mean. So where would that median be in this curve? Remember what we talked about from the previous slide. Remember where the majority of data is, right? So that would have to be, the median would have to be near that peak. Now, how does that relate to the average, to the mean? So again, we're near the peak for quantity A. So this is the sticking point again, and you can vote in the poll if you want. What do you think? Okay, so looking at this distribution, look at how it's spread, because that's going to help us to figure out the mean. So while the median is close to the peak, the mean is going to follow the spread. So if that's the case, what do you think the answer would be? Is the mean going to be bigger than the median because of that spread, or are they going to be similar, or is the median going to be greater? Right, this is what you want to be careful of. Yeah. So we know we're dealing with that peak. Well, if you're thinking, well, hold on. Wait a minute. The mean includes higher numbers, right? So let's just add that in. So for quantity B includes higher numbers because of that spread. So now we can see between the two votes that are going on, a lot of the votes are between A and B. If quantity B includes higher numbers, does that mean that quantity B is a bigger number? Well, yeah, and that's because the tail on the right side of this frequency is going to pull the mean up above the median. So it's skewed to the right. That's what they call it. So it's just dragging the mean above the median, which means that quantity B is correct. Yeah. And very good. The response is here. We can see what's being affected there. Yes. And let's see. Arislinia. Yeah. You called it there. That's very good. So at this point, I think it's time for you to try a question on your own. Now, note what happened here. We're dealing with the stat terms. We're dealing with what we understand from general observations of the distribution. Not easy stuff. This is advanced statistics, so let's give you a shot at it. Now, this next question is going to give you more than one thing to handle, okay? So we're going to give you 2 minutes on the clock to try this. And again, you can vote in the poll for what you think is the correct answer. All right, I'm excited to see what you come up with. Good luck. Okay, so it looks like so far in the voting, E is leading the pack as the correct answer. Really? Is that what you all think? It's E? Let's find out. Okay, so let's just go through this carefully and we'll see how, if you're being methodical again, you can eliminate wrong answers. The answer choices here are great guides as to what we need to focus on. But it's predictable because we're dealing with continuous frequency distributions. So we go, okay, are we dealing with median? Are we dealing with mean? Are we dealing with standard deviation? Those are the three things we think about. So let's start with the means of these three distributions. And they're all on the same scale. We can see that. So you think, which of these three distributions has the greatest mean? A, B, or C? And the majority of the points, remember, the peak is going to help us to determine that. So we can see that C's peak is the highest. So that's probably the highest mean. Okay, way up in the sky. All right. So here we go with the high mean. for C. Okay. Now, based on that, we can get rid of choice B. It says that B has the greatest standard deviation. Well, not that one. Oops, sorry. Greatest mean. So B has the greatest mean. Well, oh, we got to get rid of that then. We know that C has the highest mean, so B for Boris is out. Sorry, Boris. Ooh. Okay, so now we could also get rid of D. It says that C has the least mean. Well, no, we know it has the highest based on its peak. So we've got to get rid of D for David. Sorry, David. Don't kill me. Okay, so now that we've gotten rid of those, let's talk about those standard deviations. I got a little excited earlier and almost jumped the gun. So which of the three distributions has the least standard deviation? That's going to help. Okay, now most of us are voting for E, so most of us say that C has the least standard deviation. Remember, that's just how spread out the list is, or the distribution is. So we can see, yeah, C is the most scrunched in, right? It's the skinny distribution. So since that's the case, it does, while it has the highest mean, it has the least standard deviation as well. So yes, if you were going, it's E. You're right. We've got to get rid of A for Allie. Sorry, Allie, because, yep, we know that no, A doesn't have the least standard deviation. We also have to get rid of me. We have to get rid of C for Chauncey. What's going on? Because that says that C has the greatest standard deviation. No. E for Steve is correct. So Steve wins this one. Very good voting in the poll, even if you got it wrong. So what? We are here to practice. You go, okay, now I see how to piece these things together. Now, without further ado, let's go right into the most common of these continuous frequency distributions that might appear on test day, and that's a normal distribution. So here it is. Aha! Now, what kind of curve is this called? You see this and we think what? And expert David, he was talking about this when he was giving us the introduction to the GRE, when he talked about the scores. So you can link this normal distribution with that. And yeah, you know, we call it a bell curve, right? It's also called, and this is really fancy, it's called a Gaussian distribution. Wow. Gaussian. Now, you don't need to know any of that. Just know these properties that we're about to go through. So for normal distributions, for bell curves as they're called popularly, one thing to note is that they are symmetrical. Okay, yeah, I'm seeing everybody going, yeah, I know that bell curve. It's symmetrical. Also, the mean is the same as the median, okay, which is the same as the mode. And below that curve, all of this area is 100% of the data. So that's the overview here. Okay, now just as we saw with the other continuous frequency distributions, the majority of the data is going to be where the peak is. That's where the mean, median, and mode would be at the peak. All right, now there's a formula for this. Yeah, so let's take a look at it now. Here's the formula to calculate this, right? So you definitely want this for test day. It's an easy thing to apply when you see a normal distribution, or again, the bell curve, right? So, oh, maybe it's not, right? So do you think that you're going to need to deal with this thing right here? Absolutely not. That scares me, right? So let's get rid of this. Goodbye. Okay, so now that that's gone, let's, again, just focus on what's here on the slide. We're going to add something to it that you actually need. We can erase that formula from our memories. Now, here we go. Let's break this up with the different distributions. Yeah, see? Yeah, expert David's going, please get away from that. So here we go. Here's how you can break up the symmetry of the bell curve or the normal distribution. So based on this, for a normal distribution, what fraction of the data is within one standard deviation of the mean? So remember, bulk or majority of the data is close to the mean. We're one standard deviation away, and that's in both directions. What fraction is that, approximately? What percent is that? So if you were to plot this, track it along, you have your mean, you have one standard deviation in each direction. We can see from above, it's 34.3% going in each direction, one standard deviation away. So if you got 2/3 of the values, yeah, it's about 2/3 of the values clustered one or within one standard deviation of the mean. Now, let's put some concrete numbers to this. Let's say that I have a mean of, the mean is 50, okay? So the mean is 50. And I say one standard deviation away, I get to 65, and that's above. So one standard deviation above is 65. From this, I know how much I have to go from the mean for each standard deviation. It's going to be going up by 15. Okay, so one standard deviation here is 15 based on the numbers I picked. Now let's move on. Let's move further out from the mean. So let's say that we're dealing with 2 standard deviations away from the mean. About what percent of the data is represented by that? So not just 1, but 2. Pulling this out. So that would add in an extra 13% on each end. So an extra 26%. And if we add that to what we had before, you're probably thinking it's going, okay, I know where this is. 2 standard deviations away is almost everything. So we're starting to get to the tails or the ends of the curve. So about 95% of the values are within 2 standard deviations of the mean. So what would be 2 standard deviations below the mean based on the number I picked? So the mean is still 50. And remember, 1 standard deviation up was 65. So what would 2 standard deviations down equal? So think about that. 1 standard deviation up, we're going up by 15, right? So to go 2 standard deviations down, you go down by double that. You go down by 30. And if we go down by 30, we would get, and yes, here it is, 20. So you can start plotting things along this bell curve, along this normal distribution, based on the mean, which is the median, which is the mode, and knowing what the standard deviation is. So remember, any of the normal distributions, anytime you see this kind of distribution on test day, you know where the majority of data lie. All right, so now let's go to a question for this. So we got to get there. Yeah, and I can see all of you are on the right track, getting that 20 as 2 standard deviations below. So excellent job, an excellent job noting, okay, what percent is the majority? Keep all of this stuff in mind. So here we go. Let's try a question together. So take a few moments, everybody, just to read the stem, read the question, take a look at the answers. I'll pause my camera while you do that, and then we're going to tackle it together, okay? Okay, so I know some of you are thinking back to the previous example going, okay, I think I kind of got that. Let me see how I can apply it here. So let's do that. So we know that this is a normal distribution, right? From the first sentence, they tell us that. It's normally distributed. So that's a clue. And since we know that, we can pull in what we know from the bell curve. So you start thinking about those properties. Now, we're also given information about standard deviations both above and below the mean. Okay, so we know 71 is 2 standard deviations above, and we know that 29 is 1 standard deviation below that mean. And then we have to calculate the mean. We can also see in the answer choices that these are just integers that we're dealing with. So the mean is going to be one of those 5 numbers. Now, if you think you know what it is, you can vote in the poll if you'd like. But we're going to see how to do this carefully. Now, one thing we can do is actually plot these standard deviations out. That can help. So let's say we have a representation of standard deviations this way. And the 0 would be where our mean would go. So we're moving out from that. And we know 71 is 2 standard deviations above. So here it is. And 29 is 1 below. There that is. So they're separated by how much? That's what you think. Well, they're separated by 3 standard deviations. You can see by plotting it out, it's easy to find. And that means if they're separated by 3 standard deviations, 3 standard deviations is how much in regards to the points. In other words, what's 71 minus 29? Whatever that difference is going to be the value of 3 standard deviations. So 3 standard deviations, here's that difference, is 42. So if that is it, right? The one thing you want to be careful of is not to choose 42 as the correct answer. So note that this answers the wrong question. So that sneaky C for Chauncey, got to be careful. Probably not it, unless miraculously the mean is the same thing. So we're going to watch out for Chauncey, and now we're going to deal with this mean. If 3 standard deviations is 42, to find 1 standard deviation, remember, each standard deviation will equal the same thing. So we're just going to divide 42 by 3. And if we do that, we get 1 standard deviation is 14. Now, if you use your plotted little line there, you can see, well, wait, I have to go here to the mean, from 29 to M. And that's going up by 14, since that's 1 standard deviation. So as you're voting, D is the most popular answer. That's right. D is correct. It is 29 plus 14. It would also be 71 minus 28. 71 is 2 standard deviations above. So all of that works out. Either way you slice it, it's D for David this time. It's certainly not C for Chauncey. Okay, I'm going to take care of Chauncey. Don't worry. We'll take care of him. So now, at this point, everybody, what we're going to do is go to one final question. So just so you know, there is another part of normal distributions that could appear, but it's so rare that we're not going to cover it here, but I'll put it in for you on the slide. It's called the standard normal distribution. So the standard normal distribution, again, very rare, may not even see it at all. What it means is this: it follows the properties of the normal distribution that we just talked about, but what you add in are 2 things. The mean is 0, always. So that's the mean, 0. And then the standard deviation is always 1. So if you happen to see this very rare pattern on test day, you'll know, okay, it's a normal distribution. They said standard normal. I know the mean is going to be 0. I know a standard deviation is going to equal 1. And then you can base the answers off of that. All right. So now let's go to the final question we're going to tackle together. Beautiful job. This stuff, it'll make your eyes water, but you can see that you just have to pull out certain principles when you see them. You don't have to know everything. We do not have to turn into mathematicians for the GRE. All right, so this question is going to include, standard deviation, but it's also going to bring up a new stat term. However, despite of this new stat term, you already have what you need to get to the correct answer. So we're going to have you try this next and final question. This is going to be question 8 on your own. So for this one, everybody, let's see, on the clock, I think what we're going to give you is a minute and a half, okay? So a minute and a half to try this. Vote in the poll for what you think the correct answer is, and then we'll review. Ooh, be careful and good luck. All right. So let's see how this one worked out. Now, in a normal distribution, again, they mention this term, normally distributed, okay, which again is the same as that bell curve. So we're just piecing this together. Well, in that bell curve, about what percent of the data is within one standard deviation of the mean? Right, that's what we're talking about. We know that a standard deviation in this case is 10. So either way from the mean, again, let's think about that. About what percent of the info is within one standard deviation of the mean? That's what you think. And if you're going, wait a minute, what was that? I think it was about two-thirds of that, right? Yeah. So again, that's one standard deviation above and below the mean. Huh. So with that in mind, let's start to plot. Don't forget to plot this out on a little line. So here's our line. And we have 35 as the mean, so that goes in the middle. There we go. And we have the 25 from quantity A. Okay. So we can see what's happening there. Now, let's pull in this new term I mentioned. We have to deal with a percentile. Now, before we get to that, and here's where, remember, normal distribution, just like what you saw for the GRE scores from what David showed us earlier on, right? So those percentiles were included. So this is not shocking stuff to put together. But before we get to the 20th percentile from quantity B, let's anchor this with the 50th percentile. Where would that be in this normal distribution? So we have very good. Talking about one standard deviation away from the mean is 34% or 34%. But where would the 50th percentile be? Think about that. What does that mean? That goes along with the center of the information. So we again are coming back to measures of central tendency. Okay. So if you're thinking, wait a minute, the center, 50th percentile, gotta be with that 35, with the mean itself. And that's right. So the 50th percentile now goes to the mean, which goes to the median, which goes to the mode in a normal distribution. Yeah, so everybody's going, yeah, got that 35. No, that is the 50th percentile. Now, again, we have 25 from quantity A. And that's below the mean. We can see that. But so is the 20th percentile for quantity B. It's under, you don't want the number 25 for percentile. So let's be very careful. We've got to, and this is called making the quantities look alike. We need to convert quantity A into a percentile. That'll help us to compare much more accurately. So just be careful. You don't want to, by mistake, think quantity B is 20. No, it's the 20th percentile. So now that we have that, well, let's think about this. We talked about, and I'm going to use what you said at, we talked about CV is about 34% of the data. And we know that a standard deviation in this case is 10. So 25 is one standard deviation away. And that's one standard deviation below. Okay, so under. So based on what we have, a lot of you type this in, that means that we would take away 34 from 50 to get the right percentile of 25. Okay, well, wait a minute. Let's write this out. So we would say, okay, the 50th percentile, so 50th, minus 34 places would get us to what percentile? Well, if you do that quick arithmetic, you'll find that that's about the 16th percentile. Now we can compare. Now we can compare quantity A's percentile. So be careful. It's good to note what's what. So quantity A is the 16th percentile. Quantity B is the 20th percentile. So if you voted for B as being the greater quantity, you're right. So now we can see how plotting can still help us with percentiles in this normal distribution question. Oh, okay. So here's what we're going to do, because we're actually running pretty well. So all the experts and I, we think that we're going to give you a bonus question. We're going to go back to what I talked about before, and that was the standard normal distribution. So let's see how all of this works out. Now be very careful with me here, because at first your brain's going to twist in knots, right? This is advanced statistics. Take a deep breath, right? Because we're fine. So we're going to a special question. This is question 7. Again, we're going to try this together. Now, again, this is not something you're going to be inundated with on test day. Will you see a normal distribution? Yeah, maybe. The problem, yeah, that'll show up. Not a lot, but it'll be there. Standard normal? Maybe not ever. Maybe. But just in case it shows up, especially at the advanced level, we want to make sure that you're prepared. So to start the preparation for this, take a look at this question. Just read that on your own. Then we're going to work through together. All right, okay, so you've had some time to chew on this, chew in the cud like the cows. Now we need to see what in the world all of this means. Okay, so just go carefully through this with me, everybody. We're going to be very methodical. This question asks for the actual value of z. Okay, so we're going to have to deal with what's actual in regards to the normal distribution and what's standard in regards to the distribution. So it's actual versus standard. So if you see this kind of a question, you have to be able to toggle between the two accurately. So a lot of us were saying, okay, question 8, ooh, I missed that one. That's okay. Now we're going to see this one and hope we don't miss it. But this is probably the hardest thing to do just because it's so unfamiliar. So if you see this on testing, though, after this one, you're going to know what to do. You have a leg up on the rest of the competition. Okay. So actual versus standard. Actual versus standard. Let's now look at the standard normal distribution. That's mentioned starting in the first sentence. Now, here it says the value of z in the standard normal distribution is negative 1.2. Okay. So I see some of you are answering already. We'll see if you're right. Okay, I'll come back to that. So the value of z in a standard normal distribution is related to standard deviation. Just keep that in mind, okay? So let's plot this out. We know, remember, in a standard normal distribution, the mean is 0. So 0 is also the mean here. And a standard deviation is 1. So I'll just add that there. Okay. So what this means is if we were to plot where z goes, since its value in the standard normal distribution is negative 1.2, it would be about here. Okay. So that's dealing with that first sentence. We can see where z would be plotted according to the standard deviation in the standard normal distribution. I did all of my tongue twisters before coming on camera so I could say all of this stuff without tripping up. Now, since we have that, here's the kicker. Here's how we apply this information to the actual normal distribution. If Z is 1.2 standard deviations below the mean in the standard normal distribution, then it's also 1.2 standard deviations below the mean in the actual normal distribution. So the standard deviations are going to match between actual and standard. So we know Z is going to be 1.2 standard deviations below the mean in each. Now, and I see that a lot of you are saying 220, maybe we're on the right track. Remember, in any normal distribution, the median is the same thing as the mean. Let's go there. So we know in the actual, the median is 250, so that's the mean as well. They're not going to trip us up with that. Median, mean, mode, 50th percentile, all the same in normal distributions. So that's 250. Now, we also know that the standard deviation in the actual normal distribution is 1/10 of the mean. They tell us that. So we just need to find 10% of 250 to get what one standard deviation equals. And 1/10 of 250 dividing by 10 is 25. Now we need to get the actual value of Z. Don't forget that. We don't want to put 250 in by mistake in this box. We don't want to put 25 by mistake in the box, or negative 1.2 in the box. So let's get the value of Z, the actual one. So, well, hold on. Remember, Z is 1.2 standard deviations below the mean. So since that's the case, a standard deviation is 25. We need to multiply that by 1.2 to get how many points below the mean that the actual value of Z is. So all of that fancy talk lends itself to this. We have our mean of 250. We're subtracting that standard deviation from it. And remember, to get that value, we have to multiply one standard deviation of 25 in the actual normal distribution by 1.2. So yes, if you were going with 220, beautiful job. Oh my goodness. This is the correct answer. We put that in our numeric entry box and feel very good about ourselves on test day. That would make us all happy. All right, everybody. So beautiful job with this bonus. But remember, you may not see standard normal distributions on test day anyway. But just in case you do, you'll see that word standard. That's what you're looking for with the normal distribution. Remember, mean is 0, standard deviation is 1. Toggle between the actual and the normal. Wow. So let me tell all of you, wow, this was amazing what you've done. Beautiful job. Let's see what we've accomplished together, because we got a lot of this hard stuff. We got it taken care of. So you can take what you've learned here, and anytime you see what's about to pop up on your screen, you'll know what to do with it. No intimidation here. No, 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 no. So, again, remember, you often won't have to calculate standard deviation. So, won't often have to calculate it. But memorize those steps just in case. Okay? Also, don't forget, for much of standard deviation, we're dealing with how spread out the list is. So we talked about that. The skinnier it is, the more tightly clustered the data, and the wider it gets, it's fine, the more spread out it is, right? So just keep that in mind when it comes to standard deviation. How spread out the list is goes with that. Also, don't forget, stat terms at all different difficulty levels are going to appear here. We dealt with mean, we dealt with median, we also dealt again with standard deviation, and we combine them with graphs of continuous frequency distributions. And remember, the most common one is that normal distribution, that bell curve, okay? And a part of the reason why is bell curves are found throughout nature, actually. So it makes sense that the GRE would choose this one to test. Even they're finding, psychologists are finding that personality traits fall on bell curves. So like how agreeable or disagreeable people are, it falls on a bell curve. Do you know that? It's very interesting. Like how extroverted or introverted you are falls on a bell curve. Can you guess how extroverted or introverted I am? A lot of people get that wrong. But anyway, so just keep that in mind. Normal distribution, that's probably the continuous frequency distribution that you're going to see. And that's it. That's advanced statistics, everybody. Beautiful job with this. So good. And now, don't go yet, because expert David, he's going to come back on cam. He's going to guide us through how we can get even more from Kaplan from this GRE course. More channel. He was calling that the Netflix of Kaplan, and more core, more resources, what you can do. Great job tonight, everybody. I had a good time. But let's keep going. Here comes David. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Chauncey. That was excellent. I learned quite a bit during that time. Whew, some of that stuff was tough. So, like, I want to echo one thing that Chauncey was saying is that this is not the standard question that you're going to be seeing on the GRE during quant. You're going to be seeing these are going to be in the very difficult sections. They're going to be in the advanced last section type things. You may see a couple of them on the test. One of the worst things you can do is to sit there and just kind of obsess about one particular topic, trying to learn it. For those of you that are going for the higher scores, though, having this knowledge is going to set you so far ahead of other students. It's absolutely fantastic. So I'm hoping that you had a really good time. Tell us in the chat what you thought about that whole thing. How did you feel about Chauncey and the material and all the stuff we went through? I noticed there was a unusual amount of C's in the answer choices, though. I was a little disturbed by that. I think he rigged it so that he had more C's, because there was only, I think, one D, and I was a little bit irritated by that whole thing. But I'll move on. I'll move on. I'll get over it eventually. And we have B for Boris, and he isn't even here. Anyway, the best practices for successful prep. Let us tell you, like, the best things that you can do right now to get ready for test day. First of all, know where you are starting and know where you are ending. This applies to a lot of things in life, but if you don't have a target, if you don't have a direction that you're headed, it's really tough to actually be able to gauge your success level. Sometimes people will be like, one thing I don't want to be like is my dad. I don't want to be like my dad. And it's like having like a negative goal, having like a negative target, you can mess up in a whole bunch of different ways and still, you still mess up, but not reach that person that you don't want to be. Same kind of thing with these scores. It's like if you don't know where you're going, you can get all kinds of things and it's still not what you're wanting. So try to have a goal, try to have a target, something that you can put in your mind, that you can write on a notepad and stick it on your computer screen, and that you know what number you're aiming for. Know where you're starting and know where you're ending. That's going to help you be able to gauge where you actually are going. Because if you remember back to the stuff that I was talking about earlier, just a couple of questions can make a difference in points. Just a couple of points can make a difference in percentages, and you can jump in schools that you'll be offered and everything. And so knowing how far you have to go is a very big thing. Don't simply attack your old textbooks. Underline, don't simply attack, don't. If you think that you can just go back, grab your old college textbooks, if you haven't sold them back already at the end of the semester, and then be able to work your way through the GRE. Hopefully what you've noticed today is that the GRE is not written the way that your class textbooks were. One of the things I like to tell people is that teachers, really, they care about their students. They want you to learn material. They want you to understand it and be able to master it. But what they teach you in class does not prepare you for standardized tests, because what they're trying to get you to do is to have, retain long term. On the test, it's like completely different. And so how you normally approach your classes is not always going to be the best way to approach a test. And so that's why we tell you to do test prep, to where you're actually learning strategies, learning methods, and putting yourself into test day situations that you're going to do better on. If you were to go and grab your math book from high school or college, how would you know the best way to focus your time? How would you know how to divvy up how many hours to do this, that, or the other thing? Quantitative comparison questions, those are not on any other standardized test. That is a GRE question type. You probably haven't seen anything like that in school before. And so there are different ways around those questions where you can eliminate things. And I mean, Chauncey talked about elimination. I saw some of you in the chat going, elimination! I mean, that's like a great tool. Test days in school, elimination wasn't always helpful. If there wasn't a word bank, elimination may not have helped you at all. But on test day, it's a great strategy. Follow your study plan, learn the strategies, do drills and practice, 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 practice. What's the way to get to Carnegie Hall? I don't care, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about test day. What's the way to get your dream score? Practice, practice, practice. That's how you're supposed to do it. You've got to take the test. You've got to take quiz banks. You've got to go over things again and again and again. The more you do it, the faster you get, the more you see the strategies, the more you become familiar with the test. Because remember, these tests are standardized. What does that mean? It means it's always going to look the same. It's always going to be laid out exactly the same. And so you can learn what they're going to ask. There are times that you could take a question out of the reading comp section, for example, put it into another test without any alteration at all. What does the author feel about this? Well, I could ask that about anything. And so the more you're familiarized with yourself with a test, the more that you're going to be able to get a higher score. With our class, you're going to have at least 6 full-length practice tests. 6 tests. Think about that. The dry runs, the dress rehearsals, all of those things that you're going to be able to become so familiarized with this test that when you walk in on test day, you're going to be like, this is anything. Man, I ain't scared about this test. I've seen it. I've seen the worst it could possibly be. Bring it on. Bring it on. You know, start getting all mouthy with the proctor. And the other thing is to tap sources of expertise. Talk to people who have taken the test before. Talk to people who know what the test looks like. That sounds a lot like us. Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, we're the industry standard. We've been doing this the longest. We know what these tests look like. We're not surprised by them. We can take the test. We see a new one. We're like, yep, that's exactly what we expected. Looks exactly like what we thought. So the really cool thing about working with us, working with Kaplan, is in addition to having teachers like Chauncey, in addition to having experts like Ann and Benji and Hank and Jessica and Kat, you've got all of that stuff, but then you've got like an entire weaponry at your disposal, an entire like war chest, you know, an armory that you can just tap into and get so many different tools that are going to help you. One of the things I always like to share, just to show you how mature I am, is, you know, my favorite superhero is Batman. One of the best things about Batman is going to be his utility belt, because he has the right tool for any situation. And so you will learn more and more tools, targeted things that are going to help you to tackle math, to tackle quantitative questions that are really tough. You're going to be able to stuff tools in left and right into your tool belt so that you can attack this test and you won't be surprised. And yeah, you may have learned a tool before. You may have said, well, back in school, I remember learning about this, that, or the other thing. Can you beat a shark up with a batarang? Yeah, you can. It's probably more effective to use shark repellent, though. You know, it's more effective and it's faster. The batarang will get the job done, but you're going to be sitting there wasting time. That's the way it is when you're prepping for the GRE. That's the way it is when you're learning things with us with strategies and methods. There are some things on here that are going to be incredible. Official test day experience. You actually get to go to a testing center, do a dry run test. You sit in the testing center, you use the same computer that you'll be using, use the same headphones if they have headphones for you, use the same notepad or the same whiteboard, the same pen. You have the same smells, the same kind of people. You know exactly what goes in your locker. You know exactly what they're going to hassle you about. So then when you go to test day, it's not a brand new experience. You've already been there. You've already done it. You're like, even more reason for you to be, I'm not worried, man. Like we said, all of the practice tests, the course materials, over 180 hours of online instruction, targeted math support. One of the biggest things we hear from students is that I'm really bad at math. Well, that may be true. You may not have taken math in a very long time, and you may have had maybe not the best experience with your math teacher in high school. So we have a thing called Math Foundations and Advanced Math that you can add on, that can be a part of your class, part of your training. It's not going to be like in the sessions that you're sitting in with your teacher. It's something you're going to actually be able to go through on your own and see videos for it and do quizzes to reinforce all that math that may have been shaky all the way from the beginning. And so you can go back and learn about number properties and exponents and variables and all of those different things. The GRE channel, I mentioned that. I love channel. We have channel now for every single one of our test programs. And I love teaching on it. I love working on it. It's a more intimate atmosphere. You get to get reinforced about particular things that you're really struggling with, or things that are you just can't wrap your mind around, or things maybe you haven't been exposed to outside of what your normal classes are doing. You get to go and sit in there for 30 minutes or an hour and just have an amazing targeted teaching time with people like Chauncey, where they're going to make it so much fun and it's going to be so helpful for you. We also have different class options. And so when you look at these different things, there's like anything that you will fit your schedule. We've got something for that. You know, if you're wanting to do it on your own, if you don't have a set schedule where you're like, I can give 2 hours every 3 days or whatever, self-paced option. That's where you just go through on your own and you study at your own timing, on your own leisure, at your own availability. Then we've got prep, which includes classes, which is going to include the GRE channel. It's going to include Math Foundations. We've got Plus. Plus is going to add in hours with an actual coach that's going to sit there with you and write out a study plan and go over your tests and just help you to be even more prepared. I love coaching. Coaching is so awesome. Just the opportunities you have. It's only 3 hours, and so it's like you may think it's not that big of a deal, but the ability to sit there with somebody and meet with them, 3 or 4 times, however you split it up, and actually just go through and get to know them and become I get to be their cheerleader. I get to see what question types they're struggling with. I get to help them go through tests, and really just target our time to be like, oh man, you need to improve this. You need to improve this. Sometimes it's just they need a boost. They need someone to come alongside them and tell them, hey, it's not so bad. We can use those sessions for that. It's a coach. They're like sitting there. They're there to help you be your best. And that's part of Plus. It's fantastic. Private tutoring is going to be where it's one-on-one, either in person or online, where you're just sitting there with that person. You have a set number of hours, and you go through materials and tests and quizzes. And if you're wanting to not have the distraction of other people in the room or anything like that, the tutoring option is fantastic, and it can completely tailor. Like, let's say you're already getting a perfect score in verbal on every single test, which would be amazing. And then quantitative, you're just not. Well, with tutoring, you can totally focus and say, we're just spending our time on quant because I want to master quant and I need help. And so that's where tutoring ends up being like a really cool option. And then the GRE channel, like what we were talking about again, hey, who's this? Look at this right here. I know that guy. There you go. Chauncey. Like I said, it's the very best teachers from our GRE pool. They come in and do all kinds of stuff. And the really neat thing about channel is it's not only for people who can be there from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. You can go watch hours and hours of recorded sessions on all of these topics. So let's say you're sitting there and class got canceled because the professor didn't show up, and you're like, yeah, what can I do? I could go watch The Defenders on Netflix. I could go check out The Tick on Amazon Prime Video, or I could watch a GRE channel session, do something that's actually going to help me long term. And you can do that by just go watch one of the sessions. Plus, there's live ones. 6 days a week, you're going to be able to go and watch live sessions with these expert, incredible teachers, which is just super awesome. One of the best parts, and this is one of the things that I absolutely love. It's like when we talked about getting to know, starting where you know where you are at the beginning, and then where you need to go. These smart reports are tailored to where they show you exactly where the points are. So like what we were talking about today, very important stuff. But like I said, very small number of questions. So you have limited amount of time. You don't need to probably spend all of that studying standard deviation. That's probably, chances are, probability, that's not what's keeping you from getting the score you need. It's probably something with more questions, more representation on the test. And the smart reports will show you that. They'll say, geometry, this is how many questions of geometry there were. This is how many you got right. Look at all these points you're leaving on the table. Maybe you should spend some time learning that. And that's what the smart reports. Now, it's not smart aleck reports, which is kind of the way I said it, like smart mouth reports. That's not what it does. It's like, listen, clown, that doesn't happen. It's like actually smart reports where they help you. And it's like, I love these. I love going through them and tracking them with students. And you'll start to see where is that student's points that they can improve. Where is the one topic that they can improve? And you can start to see it going up. And then their score is going up. And it's a really neat tool that comes with all of our tests when you're working with us. Like I said, we've also got the live online, in-person, self-paced, private tutoring. What is the best thing for you? If you don't want to have to go out after you get home from work or from school, you want to be able to sit there in your yoga pants and your oversized sweatshirt and you want to just sit and use the computer and not go out, hey, that sounds awesome. I mean, seriously, by the time I get home from my day, picking up all my kids and all that stuff, I don't want to go back out. And so being able to hop on the computer and just sit there and interact and get the same level of teaching, the same interaction with other students and with teachers, you can't beat that. You don't have to deal with traffic or anything like that. It's awesome. But then there is in person. If you do want the actual personal sitting in a classroom, teacher standing in front of you, group of people sitting around you, most major colleges, we've got stuff running, going on all the time. GRE, we have classes running all the time with GRE. I mean, they just, one ends, the next one comes. One ends, the next one comes. And it's like, if you're in a pretty decent sized college town, there's probably going to be an in-person class running near you. There's also, like I said, the self-paced. If you just cannot find a time where you can go every Tuesday to class, self-paced is awesome. And then private tutoring, that's also what we were talking about earlier. And the best thing, I mean, this is like the cherry on top. So like all of that other stuff is awesome, and then there's this. Because like people are like, wow, that's, you know, that's a big investment. It is. It is a big investment. And we don't want you to feel like that investment's going to bite you in the rear end, and that you're going to be like, well, I spent all this money and it didn't work. The higher score guarantee, you get your money back. I mean, it's not like we're saying that and then there's a bait and switch going on. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that you're happy. You can retake the class for free. You can get your money back because we believe in our product. We believe that what we're teaching, it works. We have too many testimonies of people where it does work. And we know that it can help anybody who signs up. And so we're willing to stand behind it and say, hey, that check you just gave us, you can have it back if you're not happy at the end. I don't know a whole lot of people that do that because they don't want to give the money back. We don't either. I mean, I know good business would want to give it back, but that's the point. We don't. We don't normally have to because people are very, very satisfied. Their scores go up, they're happy, they get into colleges and all of that. And then we have all the good stories to share about different students and how they got where they wanted to go. That's one of the best things about working for Kaplan and helping out with all these different students is being able to then follow up and see where they are next and see, you know, where they get into college, where they get into grad programs, where they start to work afterwards. I mean, to hear stories about that, you know, and from pre-college classes on up, you know, we have stories. We all have different ones, favorite ones. You know, just the other day I was going to check because, you know, college football started up. I went and checked the roster at Duke, and there's my guy. There's one of the guys that was in my class. He's the linebacker, and I'm like, I helped him, you know, and that's one of the best things is just be able to hear those stories and hear those students that are like, I couldn't have done it. And it's just so, so awesome. And we love what we do. We all do. Every single one of us does. Otherwise, we would not do this. There's other ways to make money. When you have a job you love, when you're seeing people's lives change, that's like the best thing. So, and I know that we still have some time left. So, I mean, questions, if you've got questions, fire away. Put them into the chat. That's why we've got all of our teachers here. We've got Ann and Benji and Hank and Jessica and Kat. They're all working the phones for the telethon. Call now. And so you can ask your questions and we can help you out. If there's any really good ones that pop up, I'll be able to see them and try to see if this is something that's going to help a lot of people, and I'll talk about it. But let us know, what is it that we can answer for you? What is it that we can answer for you? Oh, and here's one other thing. Before you go, I want you to make sure you think about this. So we have a phone number that I want to put up here, and it's a very special phone number, and it's 1-800-CAP-TEST. If you call 1-800-CAP-TEST, these people are going to help you find the very best price. That's why we didn't put prices up on this thing. It's not because we're trying to hide anything from you. It's because we've got discounts running. If you're a veteran, there's certain colleges we have partnerships with, companies we have partnerships with. You call 1-800-CAP-TEST, you can talk to them about it. They can talk to you about financial aid options. What? Yeah, we do. We have financial aid options for poor, broke college students, which I know none of you are. You guys probably are all independently wealthy. But if you're not, we have options that you possibly could look into. And the other thing is, the people at 1-800-CAP-TEST, I can't get confirmation on this, but I've heard that if you call them, they will be very generous as far as letting you know about possible discounts that are maybe not even open to everybody just because you were here. So call them and get the very best price. Get them to really, really, help you out to see some things that other people may not know about. They're down in Orlando. They're feeling especially sunny because Orlando is one of the best cities in the world. That's where my alma mater, the University of Central Florida, is. That's where Disney is. So they all go to Disney. They go to Harry Potter World, and then they go to work, and they hand out discounts. And so just call them at 1-800-CAP-TEST. And seriously, for being here, tell them, hey, we were at the free trial week for GRE. We heard that you might hook us up with some really good deals. What you got running now? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, come on back here. Let's look into the secret stash behind the counter and see what we can hook you up with. Is this your size? And then you're good to go. So definitely call them and see what's rolling. Because there's always something we can do to help you out. We will always try to help you out. If you need to break the payments up, hey, we can work with you there. And so definitely call them and see how they can help. So fire in your questions. Let us know what we can do to help you out. We are here for that, to give you consultations, to help you out. If you're trying to find out where to get classes, like if there are classes running near you, that's one thing that you might want to find out about. All you have to do is, if you go to CAP-TEST, go to our website, and you can go right onto one of those class options and type in your zip code, and it'll tell you what's running in that area. And so that you can also look up the online options, and there are seriously a ton of online options. So where do I find the basic math course? That's what some people were asking. I believe you're probably talking about the Math Foundations course. That is included in plus classes. Like, let me pop back to one thing here just to show you. Like on this chart, you'll see where Math Foundations is automatically included on this line right here. So the private tutoring and the plus and GRE prep, you get the Math Foundations and the advanced math. But you also can add that onto other things. So if you're working on a particular plan you've gotten in for a different plan, you can add that on as well. Also, some people were wanting to see the actual breakdown of the test. So I'm going to pull that screen up so that you guys can see that. Um, Another really good question, someone was asking about the essay. Is it typed? Yes, it is. The entire test is taken on the computer. There is not really a paper version anymore. There's apparently in some other countries that is an option, but here it is not. You have to do the test on the computer unless you contact them and talk to them about some other accommodations and things like that. But that's at the GRE's discretion. In general, for 99% of people, it's going to be computerized. You're going to type the essays. You're going to click through on the answer choices. You're going to use their lame on-screen calculator that has little to no usability or functions. So yeah, all that's all going to be on the computer. So yeah, that's another good thing about doing the practice tests is doing them on the computer and getting used to that feel, because that's pretty tough to get used to if you're used to taking tests on paper. So, and then I saw somebody was asking about, I only have a month and a half left. One of the really nice things is that a lot of our classes run in a month. There's 4 quantitative sections, there's 4 verbal sessions, and you can go like Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, and then you're done. So a lot of our classes run in 4 weeks. And so if you have a month and a half left, you could go through an entire GRE course and be done and get all of that awesome training in that amount of time. So if you're like 6 weeks out, you're actually still in really good shape. And so that would be pretty cool. The essays, how long are they supposed to be? I don't mind answering that. We've got a couple minutes, so I don't mind talking about that. Someone was asking about how long they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be 19 and a half pages. No, I'm just kidding. We would like them, they like them to be 5 paragraphs. And pretty decent sized paragraphs at that. We don't want them to be like, you don't want them to be 3 sentences. You want them to be, nice chunky paragraphs, 5 sentences, 6 sentences each, 5 paragraphs. If you can only get away with 4, just make sure they're really good. Make sure they're 4 really good paragraphs. But 4 to 5 is going to be the big thing. And well written, clearly. I mean, this is even a step up from the SAT, ACT essays. You want them to be, you don't need to jam a whole bunch of highfalutin words into it, but having a more improved vocabulary is definitely going to be to your advantage. So someone was asking about how the test adjusts for difficulty, which again is, if you haven't taken this is a very weird thing. So you take quantitative 1. You would take verbal 1. How you score on those 2 is going to determine the difficulty of quantitative 2 and verbal 2. So you can then end up in one of 3 categories. You can be in like a lower scoring, a medium scoring, or a higher. So these are going to be the hardest questions are going to be up here. The easiest ones are going to be down here. And when I say easiest, it's a comparative thing. It's not like these are easy. It's not like they're asking you, what's your favorite color, or something like that, or, how do you spell flower? Those are not the questions that you're going to get. They're still going to be GRE level difficult questions. And then the scores are going to be assigned to each of these. So, I mean, you can see if you're in this medium section right here and you just go bananas and like ace it, you can outscore somebody in the hardest section. It doesn't mean you're doomed to live in the medium area. You probably won't be able to get a 170 on the test, but you would be able to get a very good score. And so it's not so much focusing on which one of these am I going to land in. That's the most important. It's making sure, just understanding how the test goes. And so as you're practicing, you may find yourself sliding from the easiest into the medium and from the medium into the hardest. And the thing is, you can get fewer questions right in those harder sections and get the same score. I actually had a student do that, where he was getting like more of them right in the easy section but then getting the exact same score. And we looked at his test and he had obviously jumped categories because he got fewer questions right on the second test, but he had the same score as the other one because they were tougher questions. And so understanding how that works is an important thing. Is it feasible to increase your score by 8 points in 2 months? Is it feasible? Yes, it is feasible. It's going to take work. I mean, we'll do our work. We will do everything we can to help you. But you would have to be dedicated and be willing to put in the time and the effort. That would take a lot of effort. I mean, we're talking about making sure you're doing quizzes, that you're doing tests, that you're going through videos, that you're doing everything you can do to generate that kind of score bump. I mean, it's entirely possible. Yes. It's going to be hard. I think it would be very difficult for you to do it on your own, though. A lot of times we don't see what's tripping us up. We don't see the things that are causing us to lose points. So really having someone come alongside and help you is going to be important. Learning some different ways to approach the test is going to be important. But to see that kind of jump, I think is entirely possible if you're working through learning the strategies, believing in them and adopting them. I mean, I think you can definitely do that in 2 months, yes. So do we have anything else? We've got a couple more minutes. Any other? Someone was asking about the month-long classes. Are they online? Yeah, they are online. Most of them, I mean, that's where a lot of them are going to be, because you can pick like a Monday and then a Wednesday, and you can run them parallel to each other. And you may have the same teacher for all the verbal as all the quantitative, or you may not. You may have, you know, Dennis for the Mondays and then have Jonah for the Wednesdays. But you can, I mean, online you have so many options as far as that goes. And the really neat thing too about our classes is that if you miss a session, that doesn't mean you missed it. You can go to another class that's running that session. You can go watch an on-demand video of that class at your time frame. If you're having a class that you maybe are like, man, that algebra class kicked my tail, you can go watch it again. Go to another class and see session 3. Go and watch the video on demand again. That's the series. We will do everything we can to help you. And if that means repeating a particular session, yeah, we'll find a way to do that. Your teachers will say, sure, yeah, here you go. Here's one, you know, these teachers are offering session 3. And then you go and you can reinforce that. And so it's really, really good. Someone was asking about the Q bank, and I did not spend as much time as I normally talk about. We have the quiz bank that is, I heart quiz bank. I mean, I'm serious. Where do we even have? Oh, right here, practice tests and quizzes. The quiz bank, let me just tell you, it is like thousands of questions at your disposal. They are different than what you see on tests. They are different than what you see in the book. And you can tailor the quizzes to what you need to work on. So I need to really work on geometry quiz, and you can just do them over and over. You can do them, you're riding on the bus, you're riding on the L, you're sitting in a taxi, you're riding an Uber, you're flying somewhere. You can just do quizzes on your phone. You can do quizzes on your computer, and just whatever you need, just totally like hone in on a particular topic. And there are seriously thousands of questions. I don't know, I have never had a student that ran out of questions on the quiz bank. I don't even really know of any students that I've ever interacted with that has started to see duplicates. I mean, there's just so many possibilities. And so we also had a question. A couple people were asking about, like, as far as GPA versus GRE. GRE scores are going to be of very high importance as far as entrance go. GRE scores and GPA are the two highest things. It depends on the school on exactly what percentage they would assign to each one. But they both are very important. So sometimes if you have a lower GPA, a higher GRE score could help you out. You can also focus on things like, how did you do in the last 2 years of school? Once you got into your major, in your classes for that, A lot of times grad schools will really look at that and be like, oh, wow, years 3 and 4, when you got into the really hard stuff, you had a 4.0. And so like that's, if you were able to play that up like in your essay or something like that, along with a good GRE score, sometimes you can make up for some mistakes from freshman and sophomore year by having a good junior and senior year and a good test score. So knowing that is definitely helpful. As far as someone was asking about scratch paper, you basically are going to have as much as you want. They will give you a few pieces, or they'll give you a whiteboard that you can erase. And you can't. So like if you run out of paper, you just wave your little hand, and the proctor will come and swap that paper out for another paper. And so if it's a whiteboard, you just wipe it off, and then you can keep writing on it. And so you're never going to have to worry about running out of a writing space for on the test. They will always make sure you have enough. So, all right, we're winding down here. We are getting to our final little stretch here. Let me just tell you that we are so thankful that you were here. We love working with you guys. Thank you so much. For those of you who have been here for every one of these sessions this week, thank you. You guys are amazing. And we want to be a part of your progress. We want to be a part of your journey, reaching that dream school. Let us know how we can help out. Come and join us for a class, join us for some tutoring, come and see us at the channel and all of those things. Once you're a member of the Kaplan family and you can explore all the different things, let us know what we can do to help you out. A solid GRE score is going to be important. You saw what the mean was on the bell curve as we go back and echo some of what Chauncey presented. You're talking about right around 300 combined, 150 on each, a little over that. I mean, that's going to be the starting point for most schools. I mean, that's what there are some schools that want that, but it kind of goes up from there. And so the higher level school that you're wanting to go into, the higher your score is going to have to go. So, I mean, a target, you're going to aim for 300, 305, 310, which is like adding the quantitative and verbal together. You're going to, and then, like I said, if you're wanting to get into the more elite schools, if you're wanting to get into the Ivies, if you're wanting to go to some of the really more renowned schools, you're going to have to go up from that point. You can't just, so that's where your target needs to be. I would definitely spend time talking to your college of choice and making sure you know exactly, okay? But again, we thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. Let us know how we can help you out. Call 1-800-CAP-TEST. Talk to them about options that you may have, the best option for you. They are actually teachers that work there that help people know exactly what they need to succeed. It's not just, can I sell you the most expensive program? It's, what do you need? How many hours do you need? What class do you need? What can I do to help you? And they'll give you the best discounts in addition, because remember, Orlando, Disney, Harry Potter, UCF, happy people. But again, we've had a great time. Chauncey had a great time. All of our experts had a great time. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to sign off, and I wish you well. Hopefully we'll see you again soon at another Kaplan event. Have an awesome evening. We'll talk to you later.